Good morning. It is a lovely day in April. It's cool, a little cold. We had some snow over the weekend. Anyways, in this video, I'm talking a bit about my fertilizer spreader, and you'll see the intro to the fertilizer spreader in this video, probably right now. Well, I picked up a little something for me. Make work project. Well, not really make work because I needed to do work, but I'll maybe go on this side because the sun won't be quite as bright. I picked up a 3-point hitch fertilizer spreader. Right there. I'm just in the process of hooking it onto the tractor to see what I need to do. So some of you might want to know why I got a 3-point hitch mounted fertilizer spreader. It should hold 3,900 kgs, which is like 8,000 pounds, which would be probably borderline for my tractor. I got to use that one just because of the PTO speed on it. I need a 540 because that's what it runs off of. I would have preferred a hydraulically driven one, then I could have put it on any tractor. But this one just was going to work for me because it actually has scales on it, so it weighs the fertilizer that's in there. And it's also, based on what I read, will adjust the rate on the go to maintain the rate that I want. So sometimes the people who work with fertilizer know it can change consistency based on humidity in the air, and this one will kind of change how it spreads or the amount it spreads to make sure, or the openings of the system that feeds fertilizer down to the spreaders will kind of adjust to make sure that I'm putting the right amount on. So I'm just in the process of trying to get it hooked up to the tractor and my controller to see if I can actually talk to it, and we'll go from there. And so my plan with this fertilizer spreader is to do a lot of that spreading that we need to do to top up areas of the field or do variable rate fertilizer application to just really balance out the nutrient levels of our soil. The chick manure is kind of like a broad application of a fixed amount of nutrients through the whole field. But yields vary throughout the field based on soil type and weather and year and whatever. So what we're trying to do is match the nutrient requirement based on how much we remove from the soil through growing our crops. And so we're trying to do a lot more fine-tuned fertilizer application. That's what the spreader's for. But we have a bit of a problem. Actually, I will show you that things aren't always perfect on the farm. I think most people know that farming has its ups and downs and that we tend to break stuff. And I'm as good and qualified to do that as anyone else, and we got some issues that we're fixing on the fertilizer spreader. But as I said, the intent is to do some application of fertilizer, and I was hoping to get it going right away here shortly once the ground dries off. We haven't had much rain, a little bit of snow. It's drier than it's supposed to be, but it's cold, so it's not drying the ground out real quick because we need a little bit of that warmer weather to help kind of evaporate the water of the soil. But I'm excited about the fertilizer spreader, especially once we get it going, but it's a lot more, it's a lot fancier than I anticipated, which is good, which is really good. So anyways, why don't we take a look at it and you can see the problems that I have right now. So as you can see, you're probably like, why is that on the ground and not like where it's supposed to be? It's because Jess and I took it off. I didn't get any footage of it because her and I both kind of struggled with it, and I cursed. She doesn't curse, I do. I had some working words, as they would say. But we had to actually lift this hopper where the fertilizer goes in. And actually, you can see it a lot better with it off. Anyways, it's not very hard to take off. There was 4 connection points on it. And why there's 4 connection points is because it sits on load cells, which maintain or tell me the weight of the amount of fertilizer in the hopper. But the one thing about fertilizer is some people will talk about salt index. So fertilizer, depending on what product it is, can be fairly corrosive and hard on metal. And because of that, we got a little bit of rust in some spots, so I think we're going to try to maybe clean it up before we put the hopper back on. But this is one of the connection points here. And you can see a little bit of rust there. That's not too bad. It's the side that faces the tractor, so it tends not to get hit too bad with fertilizer. But this side over here, because it's the side that faces out and where the fertilizer spread, has a lot more rust on it. Because of that, we're going to get it cleaned up and painted. And just try to get it to last a little bit longer. It's not horrible, but I'll get the grinder out, kind of get down to bare metal, kind of get it cleaned up and painted. But here behind me is the frame that it sits on, and you can see there's one of the discs that spreads the fertilizer as it drops down onto it. And it's a pretty fancy machine. This one's all tore apart because we have an issue with it, and I'll show you what that issue is. So what you see here is one that's still put together. The hopper sits down on this rubber gasket. The fertilizer drops down onto this area here. There's an agitator to kind of break it up and make sure the flow is good. And there's two electric actuators. This electric actuator, which is basically just a cylinder that moves back and forth, it adjusts the openings here to allow the proper amount of fertilizer out of the hoppers based on the application rate we want. And then this electric actuator here adjusts where that fertilizer drops onto the discs based on how far I want to spread it. So it's all programmed within the controller, but what's really nice about this is that it's automated and fully adjustable, and it's just a matter of putting the proper parameters in the controller to get the right amount of fertilizer applied, and also the right amount of distance spread with these vanes on the spinner disc. So the issue we had on this side, on this shaft, was there was a bearing that was gone in here for the doser, or the one that adjusts where the fertilizers dropped on the spinner disc, and it was rubbing on this disc here, which is not good. And the bearing has been gone for a bit, so it's all corroded and rusty, and it was a really fun job to get out, and I'll show you what those parts look like. But one of the other issues we ran into here is what this device here is on the side, where you can see kind of little slots around this little fin, I guess you call it, or like a distributor, is for when I go around the outside of a field. It will shorten the distance of the spread so that I don't spread into water courses or creeks that have water in it, or onto the road. But the problem that happened to me was I didn't check the clearance of that before I dropped it down. So when I lowered it, because it's on a hydraulic cylinder, so that when I'm in the field it's up and out of the way and it's spreading the same width on both sides. And as I said, if you're going along the edge of a field or a water course, you drop it down to change it so it doesn't spread as far. I didn't check the clearance when I dropped it down with the blades running, and I heard the god-awful racket, and I wrecked some of the blades and got them bent back and fixed. But I've got to fix this so that it doesn't run into the spinners. And I think it's just a matter of having to do some bending with this bar right here to make it the proper clearance again. So, not too hard to do. We'll get it fixed. I did talk about the 4 points that hopper connects to this frame, and here they are here. It's a load cell. So what that's doing here, get my elbow out of the way, is that it's weighing, 4 of these are weighing the amount in the hopper, and that's where the hopper bolts onto through here. So the hopper sits on these load cells, and as we're going through the field, it's automatically adjusting the rate to make sure that it's applying the proper amount. So if I want to put 100 pounds of product on per acre, it's weighing this, and as I go through the field, it knows how many acres I've done, it knows how much weight's left in the hopper, and it will adjust the flow of the openers here to make sure that we get the proper amount on. So fully automatic, which is super cool because that's something I really wanted in one of these types of fertilizer spreaders, to have it all controllable. And because of that whole system of automation on this, I can do variable rate. So as I'm going through the field, I can hit a spot in the field that needs less. It will close up the gates and put less product out. If I need more, it will open the gates more and put more product out. So fully automatic, fully capable of variable rate, and it also does kind of like section control because of the dosers that adjust where that fertilizer drops. It can change where it hits the spinners and kind of not spread as much. So it's really quite cool. I didn't expect that out of this spreader. I knew it was had the rate controller side of it and the load cells, but I didn't realize it was that advanced in terms of being able to do stuff like that. That's kind of Jessica's and my project, is to get this up and going again. I'm waiting on some bearings and some parts. So this is what we're trying to fix up on with the parts. This is the doser, and as I said, this gap here kind of moves back and forth to adjust where that fertilizer drops on the spinners for the distance. But it uses two bearings that one goes here and one's is here, and the collar of the bearing's still in there. I gotta get out, but this is what's left of the bottom one. So not a very good bearing. So we got more coming, and we got some other parts to put this all back together. I'm hoping we can have it kind of fully functional by the weekend, because I'm hoping that maybe we can do a little bit of spreading to test it out here in the next, well, maybe by the end of the week, because we didn't get much rain overnight. Haven't got much rain at all, and it looks like it's going to be dry for a number of days, so we might be able to get some field work done. Too cold to plant, but we can get fertilizer spread and some groundwork. So we're gonna get our glue back together after we get the parts. Jess and I will, and test it out, make sure it works. But that's kind of the scoop with the fertilizer spreader. So happy to have it. I'm glad we caught the bearings that were out, because I didn't want to wreck anything more on it. We'll get that field boundary spreading vanes bent in the right shape and the right gap, and get everything back together, and we should be good to go. But well, for the interest of not keeping you completely bored of watching me do stuff, I took the grinder and ground down the mount points here on the frame that the hopper sits on, and painted them up because they were pretty rusty too. I'm not the best painter over here. I was going to use cardboard kind of as my guide to make sure I didn't paint all over the place, and as you see in the video, I painted above where I wanted to paint, not below. So I actually got some painter's tape, taped it off, and got this side kind of painted up to see how it was going to work. Pretty happy with the results, so we'll do it on that point there, and the two other ones on the other side. But okay, update on the spreader. We got the little spots painted. You can see it's black paint right there and way over there. On the front side, so that's the side that faces the tractor. On the back side here, where there was a little bit more rust and beat up metal, you can see we got it painted there and there. Jess and I did that yesterday afternoon. Put some safety stuff on it too, some reflectors here, and then got these brackets. I'll get focus in here. Those painted up on both the load cell areas back here that were that get kind of fertilizer built up in this area. So with them all painted now, we can get the hopper back on after I get that stuff fixed in there. And I got the parts this morning, so I just got back from there. And I'm going to work at getting bearing in to this dosage thing that they call doser. They call it a doser. So the issue I have right now is the this part of the bearing here, which is kind of like the outer edge of the bearing, because it's so corroded from the fertilizer. I got the bottom one out, but the top one is stuck inside this area here, and I don't know how to get it out. I don't really want to take the torch here because I don't want to wreck the housing at all. I'm gonna look at it a second. I may have to just gently warm it up with the torch and see if I can get it out. Sometimes when you expand metal and then let it contract again, it will shrink enough and let go off the side that we can get it out. But normally you can punch through the bottom and push it out, but it's like tapered. They made it relatively difficult to do, so it's a little frustrating. But we'll see what we can come up with. To give you a sense of what the new bearings look like, or what they're supposed to look like. So we'll have to put this in and tap it in lightly to make sure it goes in okay and not get wrecked. But I got some spares. I thought it'd be wise to do that. And some snap rings that should work. They weren't the ones that were called for, but they'll probably do. So, not too bad. 20. $237 in parts. This bearing right here, $50. Seems like a lot, but it's probably stainless steel. Stainless steel doesn't corrode as bad, so. Anyways, I'm gonna get to work at putting this together. A little bit of liquid wrench and we got her out, and I don't think without too much damage to the holders, so I'll just get it cleaned up in here and we'll go from there. You can tell from the time lapse I got the bearings back in, pumped that shaft full of grease. And I think it was a grease fitting that just got missed, because when you push a lot of grease into it, it actually goes right out and fills that whole cavity in there and keeps the bearings full of grease, so that hopefully fertilizer or moisture don't get down into that area and cause corrosion and the bearings to go. So with it pumped full of grease, it's good to go. I'm just putting the whole thing here on again. It's kind of loose because it sits up underneath the hopper, so when Jess can help me later today, we'll swing the hopper back on. Okay, I lost camera privileges and Jess took over when we were fixing the tile, and I'm not sure what kind of job she did, so we'll have to see.
It was fantastic.
It was fantastic?
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do now, is, now that I have her help in the shop, is get that onto that. And I got my GoPro going for a time lapse, so stay tuned. Okay, we got the spinners all back on again. And looks pretty good. There's a slight rub in the bottom down here because I think just when I put it back together, it didn't seat 100% the way it was supposed to. So this doser is just a little higher than it should be, or lower than it should be, but I think we'll just call it a win because it's not rubbing like it was before. Before it was really loose. So we're just gonna check these actuators in here to make sure that we didn't mess up the dosers that are in here, and we'll go from there. Got it all done back together, everything works, and life is good. So hopefully we get a chance to use it in the near future, and we'll see how it works in the field. Should be fine. I got a special device that helps me set it. It came UPS today, so I think once the weather gets good and the fields are dry, we'll give it a try. Nice job, Jess.
Dinner time.
Dinner time, like she said.